Hello, everybody. I'm Bryan Grossman, executive editor here at 6035 Magazine. This is the 6035, the weekly show that recaps all you need to know in the news. Our guests in studio today are reporters Greta Anderson-Johns and Nick Raven, and managing editor Helen Lewis. And we're talking about, the latest issue and more. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 6035.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello, longtime fan.
Yeah. Still. Every time. So there's a lot going on in the news, but I figured we already talked about the issue that's on newsstands now last week with Pam Zubek. So if you haven't picked it up yet, be sure to get Game Changer, which is either in your mailbox or on one of the 100 newsstands around the city. But we want to talk about next week's paper, which both Nick and Greta were involved with, the cover story, and it's Outside of the Box, I believe is...
Artist Out of the Box.
Something about the box. I think
Out of the box.
Out of the box.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a box and an artist, and he's outside of it.
Yes.
Greta, why don't you start? You can tell us a
Sure.
little bit about the story.
Yeah, some background maybe to start. We did a story about Cedric Martin, who was convicted for second-degree murder when he was 18 in 2002. And he has been in prison for more than 20 years now. He recently got paroled near the end of last year in November. And part of the reason... I go into this a little bit more in my story, our story. We kind of did a two-parter.
Yes.
But he really couldn't see himself outside of prison for many different reasons. Most people know this. There's a intense culture of violence. There's not a lot of dialogue and connection between prisoners and also the guards who oversee them. And he really kind of fell into that. He was in and out of solitary a lot. He was transferred a lot for fighting. And he had kind of fallen into this trap where he wasn't able to seek parole and also couldn't really fathom what life would be like outside of prison until he started drawing in solitary, and that helped him with many different things. It helped him with connecting with other inmates as well as the correctional officers and with his own therapy when he wasn't finding that mental health support he needed from DOC. Do you want to talk a little bit about his artistry?
Yeah, so he, obviously that served as his therapy. So rather than repress emotions and stuff like that, he would use his art to express himself. And so he really got, in part because of his solitary confinement, he would use that as a really epic way to distract. And so he would zone into these just very, very detailed drawings and let the rest of the world kind of melt away. And so he produces very, very accurate reproductions of reference shots or things that are just in his head. That's one thing Chris Alvarez, one of his instructors, was talking about, was his ability to just conjure just so many interesting things because he didn't have like books and references and stuff to really draw from. So he's used that to really create like these photorealistic drawings, and then in his instruction kind of coming out of it, as well as learning new tools and stuff like that, he's being taught to be more broad and be more improvisational and quick and stuff like that. So very, very cool drawing, and they were very impressed. Jana Busanic and Chris Alvarez were very astonished by just how learned he had and accomplished he was as an artist, even being in a limited environment like prison was.
And I mean, there's more to just his time in prison and the art he did in prison. There's also this aspect of rehabilitation now that he's out. Could you guys talk a little bit about
Sure.
that
So
piece?
yeah. So now that he found a way, basically through art, and especially with the passing of his mother in 2019, he wanted to embrace positivity, because in prison it's very easy to embrace negativity, have intrusive thoughts, suicide, etc. And so he used. He was just kind of stockpiled that all together, and so when he got to meet with Karen. Karen got to help him out, and she really validated his work when, you know, the prison really wasn't, aside from like the social capital that he was building with the guards and stuff like that. But then on the outside now, when we got to meet with him, especially on First Friday, he was with crowds and he was able to connect with people, and he was like, these are my people, you know, have these conversations that he wasn't able to have, you know, back in prison.
Right.
I wanted to ask you about the role that his art actually had in helping him get out of prison, because it did play a role, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was like, it quite literally turned into a channel for him to get parole. Because as I said, he really didn't see himself getting it. He had a hearing coming up, and this woman, Karen Hamer, who was a Shakespeare theater program director, he met her through that within, I think it was Fremont Correctional. She learned that he had a parole hearing coming up, and she took it upon herself to be an advocate and really throw together this internship program with Yana at Yellow Couch Collective, and an employment opportunity later with Creative and Concrete Couch is where he's employed also now. So it's literally like what they used on his, there's like a lot of documentation you have to fill out when you apply for parole. This internship and this job is what got him parole.
And Yana had never written a grant before, so there's actually a pull quote in there about them like building the car as they're driving it.
Yeah.
So they're trying to figure all this out and all these different things, transportation, housing, all this stuff for him, so that they could pitch that to DOC and be like, okay, this is what's going to happen when he gets out here.
Because that all has to be nailed down.
It all has to be nailed down. They need proof of everything.
And they continuously need to turn in paperwork to prove that he's got the housing, he's got the transportation, and he's got the job.
Right.
So, and Yana has told us that that's been a little bit hard to legitimize with DOC. Like, it's not a 9 to 5, right, where he's going and doing some like retail job or something like that. He's coming and going from Concrete Couch and from Yellow Couch, and doing art in a more like freeform way. But he's also taking classes and things. So it really is just like this built from scratch program that got through DOC. And I think part of the reason for that, Karen explains, is there was a really sympathetic parole board member who listened to him speak. He's also a very powerful speaker. She listened to him speak and really saw something in him, saw that he could be rehabilitated and that he had, you know, worked his way there by the time of the hearing.
Yep. Is this bigger than Cedric? You know, we talk about this one particular case, but what are they looking to do with this sort of model with other people who have been incarcerated?
It's hard to say. It seems like Jan and them are at kind of at capacity with just Cedric
just
right
the one
now.
Right now.
Yeah.
With just the one right
it's
now.
Brand new.
Right, and he's basically he's the pilot person for this in Colorado Springs. Obviously, it's been happening in other places around Colorado Springs, or Colorado, I should say.
Yeah.
But in Colorado Springs, it's relatively new. So this really, and I think even through the story, it's going to be able to prove out to others in the art community, you know, wraparound services, stuff like that, to say, hey, we can take more. We may not know now that, you know, Yana and Karen and Chris have kind of proven out the ground, kind of toughed it out a little bit, that they could say, all right, this is the start. Cedric's our case. This is working. So let's see what more we can do. As to what form that takes, who embraces that is yet to be seen. But it's definitely like a symbolic victory as well.
Sure.
Because we have a lot of artists in the prisons.
I was just going to say.
Were you here? Were you guys here when we had the art show here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that
wasn't
was
here
through the
yet.
University of Denver's Prison Arts Initiative. And I spoke with the professor who still runs that. And Colorado is pretty robust when it comes to prison arts programs. DUPI, which is what they call it. They are in every prison in the state. She said she's worked with thousands of inmates and seen many people, you know, leave their gangs and reconnect with family members, like all these transformative stories. And they have that Chained Voices is what it's called,
right.
the art exhibit, which I know we were a part of. So I think I was talking with Karen a lot more about the national picture. She's now at the University of Texas at Dallas doing research on prison theater programs and the efficacy of getting people who participate in those programs out of prison. I think now the task is to prove how these programs can be effective and do it with data, because that's really what the wardens and DOC are looking for. That's what Karen and I talked about a lot, because stories like Cedric's can be really powerful, and these anecdotes are really powerful. However, DOC looks for data. The government structures, they look for
line graphs
provable
and bars and stuff like that.
Yeah. But that's another thing that Karen really didn't want to get lost in her research too, is like academia can narrow it down almost too much into numbers too. So I think she sees Cedric as a story that can highlight the data in a special way, and it's important, she thinks, for it to come from somebody who's experienced that really dark place of being in prison and being stuck.
When you say data, is it recidivism that they're mostly looking? I mean, that's the idea, right?
Yeah. DUPI does look at recidivism. They collect their own data. But that's another thing, is some of the measures aren't really established yet. Like recidivism is a lot of what they look at, but also like, can they look at how many people actually just get out?
Yeah.
So even the measures themselves are not, and that's another piece of it's hard to measure efficacy when people are having individual good experiences, but like how do you
measure art?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, do you put like a meter
12?
on it, a thermometer? Like, how do you do it? Yeah.
And I mean, Helen mentioned the artist aspect of a lot of people who have been incarcerated. They have sort of these artistic abilities that they discover, and it makes sense. It's sort of an escape, right? When you're behind bars, that's one way to escape. I wonder if they're going to look at is modality the right word? Other writing or what other things are inmates interested in that could act as a bridge once from being incarcerated into being in a free society again.
Right, and a lot of this piece is about like the visual arts. He has experience. He was in their theater class. He wrote a play. He was doing poetry and stuff like that. And again, it's like, it's hard. All right, well, did you write 8 poems? This quarter? Did you make 3 visual pieces? How big were they?
The data again, the measuring.
The cruelty of cold numbers. And so that's like really hard we can speculate, but it's like really hard to quantify that, especially when if you're doing it and then what the outcome is as a result. So
DUPI does have like a prison-wide newspaper actually, and a literary magazine, so there is some like writing opportunities in there. They also, I think, do a podcast, which I believe Cedric has been on. So there's many different ways that they
do what we do.
Yeah, right.
Basically, we're not needed in this.
It's either a podcast or like a radio station, but all really cool things to not just beyond like the visual arts, beyond the visual arts, to get inmates to be creative.
It'd be neat to see more programs, because not everybody's artistically inclined, even writing or photography or drawing, but there's something that everybody's good at, and if they were able to grasp onto that,
because early on, like there's an anecdote that I write about they have programs for engineering and stuff like that while you're in there. And this was, he was into this like 20 years ago, like kind of just starting out. They had 3D Studio Max, 3D Studio Base, and so you could like plan out spaces and do that stuff. But if there was more learning opportunities, like this is how you podcast, this is how you promote yourself, this is how you do your YouTube thumbnails, your stuff like that. So then it's part of rehabilitation. You're getting your mind off of whatever mindset or whatever environment you're in that, created this situation in which you committed this crime, and then you can think forward. It's like, oh, you know what I know video production, I know audio production, I know this and that. And I think expanding that would be amazing, instead of just throwing you in a box forever.
There's not a lot of rehab there, right? So how do you actually rehab people? And I know that's our country has wrestled with that, and you look at a place like Norway where you get your own suite and like a video game console and
a puppy or
real
something.
pencils to draw with.
It's
definitely interesting to look at other methods. So, real quick, I know this isn't the only thing in the paper next week. You got something about District 49. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sort of. Beyond District 49, but the Neighbors for Education group that formed right after the November 21 school board elections. They're looking to change their strategy a little bit going into this year. They want to appeal to more people and be less reactionary and more proactive. So I went to a roundtable with the D49 members of Neighbors for Education and Peter Hiltz, he's the CEO, basically the superintendent of D49. And it was a really interesting conversation. Basically, they were looking for more ways they can be supportive and less, even though they still feel it's necessary to call out board members when they say inflammatory things, which lots have in this area. They are also looking to, support the district more and see what they need in terms of like things like teacher pay. Some other strategies were discussed too. But yeah, really interesting, and just also interesting to see how much they've expanded. They're going to be starting a D20 chapter as well.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Because I know they're real active in D11. Do we know what the membership is?
No.
Yeah.
I should check
on
on
that. Interesting. So sort of focusing on the things that maybe some of the board members should have been focusing on instead of the circus atmosphere.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe they can move the needle a bit.
Yeah.
We can hold out hope.
Yeah.
Other districts too, right? Not just yeah.
And it's important now because there's more than half of the seats in those largest three districts, D11, D49, and D20, are up for re-election in November. So, and those are going to be, they either have the power to reinforce the conservative majorities that we've seen or take them away.
And just to note that there was never supposed to be this conservative progressive divide. It was supposed to be all.
These are nonpartisan.
I was going to say, there's no D's or R's when you're running for a school board.
Undeniably, it's become very partisan. Yeah. So hopefully,
like everything
national
else,
issue.
Right?
Yeah.
Not just education.
Yeah.
And you're doing Legos.
Yeah.
Tell us about your Legos, Nicholas.
Yes.
All over Bryan's
I was going to
floor.
say, I was going to say, Helen's also an expert on Legos. I have no doubt.
So I've got a shorty teaser this week, but next week we doing an interview with the Bricks and Minifigs guys.
Yeah.
It's a franchised so there are people think that this is just the only store. I don't know where their corporate office is. I haven't dug that far in yet, but they've been around since like 2010. And so they'll go into a market, they'll do a soft open, they'll do a buy event where they want all the locals to sell their Legos. And so what they'll do is they'll offer contemporary Lego sets and stuff that you could go to Target or Walmart. They've got tons and tons of them there. So the selection in that regard is not as big, but then they also offer retired sets and stuff like that. So older stuff that kind of go closer to eBay rates on the and then they'll have used stuff. They have like completed newer models. They had like the Globe, which is like a 2,500 piece set, which I really want.
It's like a globe.
It's an actual globe with like the actual armature on the side and
all
everything.
Made of Lego.
All made of Lego.
What does it go for? You say you really want it, yeah.
So I want to say new in box is like $250, I think. Yeah, they had a full Titanic there.
Like a life size? Actual size?
So about as far as you spread your arms there. That's how big it was. That's how big it is.
Yeah, so life size.
Yeah, exactly. Hop in, everyone.
Not you, Leo.
No.
No room
you
for
can't
you.
float on this door.
It's not going to go well anyway.
No. But that one new in box is like $650.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. I didn't see like an Eiffel Tower or anything, but they have so they have new, used, they have contemporary, discontinued. They even had some store branded models that they have that were they're like, I don't know, like 100 pieces. So they actually have, what they'll do is they go through, I was doing a little bit of research. It's an Etsy creator. They do special ones they had like A10 Warthogs. They had like B2 Bombers and stuff like that. They're like 100 pieces. They're like $30 each, but they're Bricks and Minifigs branded sets with Lego components in there, so they're all hand
So they made
done.
them.
Wow.
They made them up out of Lego that
Right.
didn't exist as a
Yes.
set. Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
they
Wow.
Custom sort of,
exactly,
right.
and so they have they had a display of like Star Trek ones as well. And I was telling Bryan earlier that there's a site called Rebrickable where you can actually, people will do these custom sets and then make instructions for them, and then you pay for the PDF essentially. And then they have an API with these other sites where it gets really deep, guys. Where you can actually go and just, it like creates this shopping list of parts. And then you buy them
Wow.
all in
Which
one
pieces,
cart. So I don't know if they arrive together or whatever, but you'll get the manual as a digital thing. You'll get the pieces in the mail, and then you just put together this thing. And it's like this open source kind of thing, except, with capitalism and all that stuff. But yeah, yeah. But they had like Deep Space Nine in there. It was a lot of
Wow.
stuff. Yeah, really big sets.
I can say I've never seen Nick this excited.
Yeah.
We talked about the nerd issue a couple of months
Yeah,
ago.
and even then.
It's like, I don't know. Nerds.
This is
whatever.
peak Nick right here.
Oh, we haven't started.
I need to get you together with my son. My son got a Millennium
Falcon. Milling about, yes.
I'm turning into my mom, where when it comes to pop culture, you got to get half of the name wrong.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Not the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
Yes, not the Millennial Falcon.
Not the Millennial
That's
Falcon.
my mom.
Right.
Yes,
No.
the Millennium Falcon.
Yes, the Millennium Falcon.
Rabbi Ribaldo. Never mind. Yeah, so he put that together. It was over 1,000
one?
pieces. The Millennium Falcon.
No, but which one?
Oh, I don't know. There's more than
Because
one.
they do
man,
like
really?
3 or 4 different sizes.
It's the 1,000. It's probably 1,200 pieces, and
Okay,
it's,
so
it's
they
like
have
that
one-
big when you're done.
Okay.
You need to do your
okay.
research, Bryan, before you come to us.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
We gotta talk.
I'm sorry, I didn't
No,
know there
no,
was
it's fine.
something.
They have one. It's actually it's their $800 one. It's like
Oh,
the
I can
size
tell
of
you
this
it's not that
table,
one.
and it's like 4,500 pieces.
My parents don't love their grandchild that much.
It's like, I can send you to college,
It's the
or I can buy
middle.
this.
It's the middle love package.
Yeah, because I even have the one where it's like 75 pieces, and it's just Han and a minifig, just like the size
Yeah.
of this coaster.
Okay.
So they there's like, okay. Anyway.
Okay. Well, I have 2 words for you. Well, maybe one play date. So,
All right. We just need to turn one of our rooms here into a Lego room.
okay.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Can we get? Can
I'm
we
not
get,
walking in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wear boots. That's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Wear shoes. All right. Well, on that note, we're gonna wrap it up. So thanks to Greta, Nick, and Helen for joining me here in the studio. Don't forget to pick up this week's paper, Game Changer. Don't forget to pick up next week's paper, Outside the Box, or something along those lines.
Out of the box.
Out of the
Artist
box.
out of the
Yeah,
box.
artist out of the box. Check out our new website, 6035media.org. If you have anything you'd like to share regarding our podcast, questions or comments, go to podcasts@6035media.org.
Send an email to.
Send an email to. The show is produced by Dave Gardner and Nick Raven. Videocast is directed by Nick Raven. Music is by Jeremiah Walter. Our digital media specialist is Sean Cassidy. Art director is Dustin Glatz. Publisher is Amy Gillentine. And I'm Bryan Grossman, editor-in-chief. We'll see you next time on the 6035.
The 60-30